One of our challenges when we're using wide area networking, those wide area network links don't run as fast as local area network links do, right? So one of the challenges that we run into occasionally is if we have users in this one site and their domain controller on the other side of a wide area network link in another site will sometimes have slow response times because we're having to authenticate across that wide area network link. So the solution is to put a domain controller in their site, and then using Active Directory sites and services, we can identify, hey, your domain controller is, or this domain controller is in your site, go authenticate to that one and it'll be faster. But we don't always want to put a full domain controller somewhere because of security issues. So Microsoft has created an option for us called an RODC, or a read-only domain controller, which we can put in a remote site where we might have a few more security concerns because we can't physically control access to it as well as we could at our main site due to limitations with the actual building. So we can create a read-only domain controller. Now, since we're doing this in remote sites, we can do this one of two ways. We can go down there, we can set up our server, we can install Active Directory, and then we can promote it to a domain controller. And when we do that promotion, we can specify this as a read-only domain controller. The other thing we can do is we can set up in Active Directory a domain controller account first as a read-only domain controller. Then we can ship the computer down there, give it to somebody else, say, hey, you set it up, join it to the domain, and then it's going to discover, hey, there's a computer account here. This is supposed to be a read-only domain controller, and they don't have to run through that entire process. So here's how we do this. I'm going to go to Tools, not Manage, Tools, Active Directory Users and Computers, and I'm going to look at my domain controllers, and I have one right now. So I'm going to right-click on domain controllers, and I'm going to pre-create a read-only domain controller account right here. Yep, we'll click next on the intro. So if I am logged in as somebody with the rights to do this, then I just leave this here. If I'm logged in with as somebody who does not have the rights to do it and I need to specify alternate credentials, then here's where I set my alternate credentials. I'm logged in as administrator, so I'm good. I'm going to click next. Okay, computer name for the RODC. Now I'm going to put this in a remote site. So I'm going to say this is going to be my Prosser RODC, or read-only domain controller. And notice it populates down here. Move this to the center of the screen. The Prosser RODC.dalton.local. Cool. So I'm going to click next. It's going to verify the name, so it says spins for a second, runs, make sure there's nobody down there. Now, it's going to ask what site I want to put this in. Now, you'll notice I've already created all of my sites. I did that in a previous video. I can actually add it to my current site as well if I just want another authentication server within my site. But in this case, I'm putting it in Prosser on the other side of a wide area network link. So I'm going to say put this in Prosser and click next. So it's going to check our DNS configuration, and then it's going to come up and ask me for some domain controller options. Once it gets done with examining our DNS configuration and make sure everything's going to work for what we want. This is probably, honestly, the longest part of this particular process. It doesn't take forever, but it does take it a few minutes. There we go. So here are my options. Notice my read-only domain controller is grayed out. It's checked, but it's grayed out. That's because I'm pre-staging an RODC, so it has to be an RODC. Now my options are, do I want this to function as a DNS server and a global catalog server? Honestly, best practice is we have one global catalog server per site. It makes looking up things in Active Directory faster and easier. So I want to go ahead and leave that. The DNS server, yeah, I can go ahead and leave that as well. That means I'm going to have a local DNS server in Prosser. I'm going to have a local domain controller for authentication, and I'm going to have a local global catalog server for faster lookups. Now that means all of these operations down in Prosser should run a little bit faster and easier. So, and less reliant on sending traffic across that wide area network link. And if the link goes down, they can hopefully still have some functionality. That's what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. Now, this is going to be the user or group that can handle the RODC installation. So whatever user or group I edit, and best practice is do a group and then you can add users to that group. You can do a specific user as well. If you set this, then what'll happen is that account will then become the administrator for this particular account. So notice the user group that you specify to attach the server account. They'll be able to complete the RODC installation. They will also have local administrative permissions on the RODC. So if I give it to somebody, then they're going to be able to manage that. If I don't want that, and I want that to be me, I'm just pre-creating this in advance, then I can go ahead and leave it, and then any administrator can go ahead and set it up. But if I want somebody else to be able to set it up, and frequently that's why we do this, right? So I don't have to travel down to Prosser, which is not that far away from where I'm at, but let's say we're doing this in Chicago. Do I really want to fly to Chicago to install a read-only domain controller? Or can I pick a local site admin in Chicago and say, hey, here, you have permissions, you go do it. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this, so it's going to be my administrators who have to do it, and click Next. Once I'm happy with it, click Next and Finish, and it will create my Prosser RODC. And we'll see it right here. Now notice this little down arrow. Basically, it's disabled. Here it tells me this is an unoccupied DC account. It'll be read-only and a global catalog server. So once that Prosser RODC server comes up, then this account will go active and they will be fully operational. Okay, there we go. That's how we pre-stage an RODC for easier deployment.